of the flesh, always opposing God's will. Now remember, Jacob got saved. He's a believing man, but there's still battles that he has to face. Even though he got saved in chapter 28, he still has to battle the flesh in chapter number 29 through 31. So he is a believing man, but he's now he is a broken man. He is scared to death that Esau is going to bring those 400 men with him and kill him and take his wives and take his children and take all that he had. Because remember now, the last thing he ever heard from Esau was, when our father dies, I'll kill you. So he's a broken man at this point. Now, God had already promised Jacob that God would continue the promise he made to Abraham through Jacob's life. Jacob has 12 sons. One of those sons' name is Judah. And when you read in the book of Matthew, you'll read the ancestry takes Jesus all the way back to Judah. And that's the line or the lineage that Jesus came to this earth through, was that tribe of Judah. Now, Jacob is a broken man. Anytime that something breaks that's valuable to you, you want to try to fix it. My wife has this casserole dish. She loves it. I accidentally tried to put it up. Women, they put things up delicately, right? I mean, they put everything kind of fixed like this. Men don't do that. I open the cabinet and I shove it in. If there's no room, I'm going to shove a lot harder. Right? Because that's the last thing I want to do. She had surgery, and I was in there trying to pick things up, put things up, and I'm shoving stuff in. There's no room for it. And I get that thing, and I'm pushing and pushing, and I hear something break. Well, I'm smart enough to know that since I broke it, if I don't fix it, then she's going to fix me. So I get some super glue. person talk, they're always blaming somebody else. Now, I'm not saying that this person has not been hurt by people, but every time they talk, it's always about what others did. There can be no healing until there's honesty. I know a man right now that he pastored, I think twice, and his wife had passed away, I think in 2012. That's devastating. And had a little young daughter. And for all these years, he's been so-called trying to get help. He's went to every kind of program you can think of, some that me and Krista recommended. And he's gone to counseling, he's gone to therapy. But here's the thing. Every time he talks about what he's going through, he always points back to what everybody else has done in his life, and he will never have his heart and his mind healed until he gets honest. Now, you say, well, what does that have to do with this verse? Well, notice, he said, what is thy name? He knew his name. He didn't forget his name. So who was he asking? To whose benefit was it? Wasn't the angel of the Lord. He knew his name. This is what he was saying. And I believe this is how it happened. He said, what is thy name? I think there probably was a little hesitation. Jacob didn't want to have to say his name, because he knew his name. Not only did his name mean a trickster, a deceiver, a conniver, his name reminded him of who he really was. And it reminded him that much that was wrong in his life had to do with him. And by admitting that name, he was admitting, I've been trying to fix my life. I've been trying to repair my life. I've been trying to make my life better, and it's only gotten worse. And here I am in the middle of the night, all by myself. Everybody I love and everything that I love, it's nowhere to be found right now. I'm all by myself. And for him to admit who he really was, that was the key to unlock the door to his heart. Joseph in the Bible, as far as we know, we can't find anything about Joseph's life that we can point out as sin necessarily. That's why when you think of what we call typology in the Old Testament, meaning a place or an event or a structure, an object or person, that they have similarities to Christ. Joseph is one of those pictures, if you will, or we call a type of Christ. And he was betrayed by his brethren. The Bible says that Jesus came to his own received him not. And he was the favorite of his father. And when Jesus was baptized, there was a voice from heaven that said, this is my beloved son, whom I'm well pleased. And so there's a lot of similarities between Joseph and Christ. We don't read necessarily where Joseph did wrong. We know he must have, because all of sin comes short of the glory of God. But now Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. They beat him up, and they killed an animal and put blood over the coat that his father gave him. They sold him for silver, like Jesus was betrayed for silver, and they sold him into Midianite slavery, and then he is sold to an Egyptian named Potiphar, and he's in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife lies and makes false accusations against him. He goes to prison, and he interprets a dream for a baker and a butler, and the baker the dream was that he'd be killed, and the baker would be released the butler would be released out of prison. And he said to the butler, he said, now don't forget me now. Don't forget me. He said, I promise I won't forget you. But for 2 years he did. And then finally Pharaoh has a dream, and no one can interpret it. And the butler says, when I was in prison, this man interpreted my dream and it came true. Maybe he can do yours. So Joseph comes out of prison, interprets Pharaoh's dream, and Pharaoh, he promotes him to second in command over all of Egypt. During that time, there was 7 years where there was plenty, and then there was 7 years there was a famine. A year into that famine, Jacob, tells his sons, we've run out of food. I hear that there's food in Egypt. Go there. They go there. They think that Joseph is either still in bondage and slavery or Joseph is dead. And when they come, if you were going to get anything from Pharaoh, you had to go to Jacob first. His name has been changed. He's married an Egyptian woman. And so they come to get food. And when they come, they have to come to Joseph, but they don't recognize Joseph. He doesn't speak in his Hebrew language. He speaks in Egyptian, and he has disguised himself, if you will, to look more like an Egyptian. And so the story goes back and forth where he gives them some food, and then he puts money in all of their sacks, and then he has them arrested, and then they come back, and he says, all right, don't come back again unless you bring your only brother Joseph or Benjamin. And so they finally bring back. And so it finally ends up that they bring Benjamin back, and all 10 of them are there, and they're before Joseph, and all of a sudden Joseph can't take it anymore. Now, he's been hurting for, maybe almost 30 years, 28 years, 29 years. Joseph has been hurting. His heart is broken. He's had to, no doubt, he's had to live with being depressed and discouraged. His heart breaks because he hasn't seen his father in all these years, didn't think he would ever see his family again. And all of these emotions, when he sees his brothers, he's reminded of the hurt, and he's reminded of the lies, and he's reminded of the pain. And then he's reminded of the pain of being separated from his father. He's reminded of the pain of his mother dying and him not being able to see her. All this is going on, and Joseph finally tells his servants to leave the room, and he breaks down and he weeps and he cries, and he finally tells his brothers, I can't take it anymore. I'm Joseph. I'm your brother. See, he couldn't get healing until he got honest. He had to get honest. See, here's what we do many times. When we are hurting and our heart is hurting, no matter what it is that we're going through, we're real good about putting a mask on. We are. We're real good. I can tell you that, and I didn't think anybody noticed it, but there were times when my late wife, she had an open wound from here to here and a wound vacuum on, and there were times that I would try to get it all fixed up, go over to the church, and teach Sunday school, and then she would text me and say the seal broke, and when that happens, you don't have a lot of time. You have to get it cleaned up and get that resealed so that there's no infection gets in. And I'd go home in between that and get back to the church, and song service still go. My associate pastor, I'd text him and say, hey, if I'm not there after the song service, just go ahead and just read some verses. I'd get back over there, and I thought that I was hiding the pressure and the hurt and the pain and all of that. I thought I was hiding that. After she passed away, my music guy, music man, Brother Danny Curtis, he says to me a few weeks later, he said, preacher, I know you're devastated. I know your heart is broke. He said, but I got to tell you, there's something different about you. I said, what do you mean? He said, I can't tell you how many times I saw you coming to the church, and it's almost like I could see the entire world on your shoulders. I thought I was doing pretty good, but I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't being honest with other people. Whenever she was really bad off, I would get up in the morning. I would take the kids to school. I'd come home and I'd get in bed and I would sleep. I was so depressed, I'd sleep until about 2 o'clock. I'd get up, get a shower, shave, make sure that I looked all right, and put a smile on my face, and then I would go and get the kids and get them back home. I did not want them to know. They already had enough on their shoulders carrying that burden of their mom being sick. I didn't want them to see me hurting. And finally, my late wife's in the hospital, and I went to see her in Little Rock, and I come back, and I'm in the bedroom, and I just couldn't hold it in any longer, and I just began to cry. And I remember a couple of the kids come in and said, Dad, what's wrong? And I had to go ahead and tell them. I said, I'm sorry. I don't know if I keep carrying this load anymore. And I had to go ahead and admit, I said, Dad's been hurting and depressed, and I'm lonely. And I'm telling you, it was almost like the weight just got lifted off. I could not be. Now remember now, Jacob has been a bent man and a believing man and a battling man, and now he's a broken man, and he cannot be a better man until he is honest. He's honest. And when he said, and this, I think he said it kind of like this. I think the angel of the Lord said, obviously he said, what is thy name? And I can just see Jacob, and he's wringing his hands, he's tossing his head, and he finally cries out. It wasn't like, well, my name's Jacob. No, I think it was like this. My name is Jacob, all right? It's Jacob. You know it's Jacob. I know it's Jacob. Everybody knows it's Jacob. I've ran from Jacob. I've hid Jacob. All right, you want to know my name? My name is Jacob. This is what's really wrong with me. And he finally got honest. When he got honest, he got healing. Because if you'll look, after he said Jacob, verse 28, and he, the angel of the Lord, said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. Now, there can be no transformation until there's confrontation with yourself. I mean, listen, we don't want to admit often what's really bothering us. We don't want to admit that. And I'm saying to you, me, anyone can never get the healing in their heart they need until they're honest. Until they're honest. That happened to me in 1998. I was so, I don't know, I was on edge all the time. Everybody had to walk on eggshells around me. And I thought everybody else had the problem. And one Saturday night, I was preparing for a message, and I couldn't get anywhere. It's like I'm reading the words, but it's like concrete. I can't break through. And I told my late wife, I said, look, I'm going to be up for a while. And I said, will you take care of the kids? She got them put to bed. I got on my knees, and I said, God, I don't know what's wrong. I feel like my prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling. I said my heart feels like a stone, and I don't know what's wrong. And the Lord said, no, you do know what's wrong. You got bitterness in your heart. You got unforgiveness in your heart. And you're trying to make everybody else think that you're some super Christian, and man, you can rise above all the circumstance and all of that. But deep down, that's what the Lord speaks to. Deep down, I know what's wrong with you. You're still hurting by things that happened to you when you were 5 and 6 and 7, 8 years old. You're still angry about this that happened. And by the way, it wasn't my fault. He said, I was a kid. It wasn't my fault. He said, you're still upset about that. You're still angry about that. You're still hurt about that. And the Lord just went ahead and he diagnosed everything that was wrong with me. And I didn't want to hear it. And I finally, on my knees at that couch in that little house that we were living in on base housing, I just cried out and I said, God, you're right about everything. You're right about everything. And I just cried out to God, and I was honest with God and honest with myself. And since that time, it's been so much easier for me to be honest. Sometimes honesty is admitting what you don't want everyone to know about you, and sometimes honesty is admitting that you're hurting by what someone did or said or whatever it was to you. But see, Jacob could never become a better man until he was a broken man and was honest with himself. It had to be, because the angel knew his name. He wasn't asking, he was not soliciting information from Jacob to make him know more. This is the angel of the Lord. He knew Jacob. He created Jacob. And all this time, over 20 years, since he met the Lord the first time, God has been wanting him to be a better man, but he couldn't until he got broken enough to be honest. And I'm telling you, I've seen people that just were honest with themselves, that maybe we were counseling and they were honest with themselves and honest with us. And I mean, it didn't take long that God was able to heal their heart. But I've seen people to this day, 25, 30, 40 years, they still have not got healing in their heart because they refuse to be honest. See, it's so much easier to blame somebody else. It's so much easier to put the blame on someone else because we don't want to carry that guilt. We don't want to carry that guilt. And we'll never get healing until we're honest. We're honest. Sometimes now it's being honest about our sin. Had a guy came to my house. He and his wife were having trouble. His wife, she came to the house first to let me and Krista know what we had already assumed probably, that she'd been having an affair. Well, then he comes over. And she's getting help because she got honest. She wept and cried, and she was honest. He comes over, and me and her and the husband are sitting out back behind my house at an area where I had a little fire pit, and they're out there. And so she tells him, this is what happened. And naturally, he was furious. And it got heated. He was angry. And then he said something. He said, I can't believe you did that for my best friends. I said, wait a minute, hold on. How do you know this guy? And she looked at him, and I won't call his name, but she said, tell him. She said, I've been honest. Why don't you be honest? Tell him. He looked and put his head down. The guy that she had the affair with was a guy that he introduced to her because that's who he bought his cocaine from. So here this man is angry. By the way, it was wrong what she did, but he's angry at her. But as a man who's supposed to be the one that leads his family, he's the one that put her in an environment where she had not done this before, and now both of them they're doing drugs together and all that. Then they're going to these parties together, and he's putting his wife in situations that she shouldn't be in, and he's enjoying all that. And you know what? I finally looked at him and I said, "Listen, you're part of the problem too. You need to go ahead and be honest. You need to be honest about your sin." I said, because what you've been doing for the last 30 minutes, you've been blaming her for everything. But wasn't she supposed to follow you? She did. She followed you into this. And sometimes we got to be honest about our sin. There's a lot of forms or sources for depression, but one of the main ones is sin. Sin. Jacob, when Jacob said, my name is Jacob, he was being honest about his sin. From the time he was 16 years old, now he's in his 90s. And sometimes we've got to be honest about our hurt. Sometimes we've just got to say, God, I still have not gotten over this. Joseph, listen, you would think that Joseph was over all of that and he had moved beyond that. Here he is. He is probably at that time at least the second or third richest man on earth, and he's definitely the second most powerful man on earth, and he's living in palaces, and he's got all the money, and he's got a wife, and he's got 2 children, but deep inside, he's been hiding the hurt. When he took that mask off, Jacob said, my name's Jacob. Joseph said, my name's Joseph. I'm Joseph. And there was such relief in Joseph's life. God could not do more with Jacob's life until Jacob got honest about himself. And if you or I, no judgment here, just confession, transparency. If you and I if we're ever going to get the healing in our heart that we need, we're going to have to be honest before there can be healing. And so, Jacob, he confronts himself, he's honest with himself, and then God is able to change him. He now can become what God created him to be when he first got honest about who he really was. Sometimes that honesty is going to someone and saying, listen, I need to talk to you. Sometimes it's going to your children. It's going to a parent. It's going to a wife. It's going to a husband. Sometimes it's just you alone with God. But no one will ever have their heart healed until they're first honest. First honest. So tonight, honesty comes before healing. And I believe that if myself or you, if we're ever going to really have the broken parts of us put back together again and our hearts being healed, we first have to be honest. Let's pray. Heavenly Father,